fuck we rocking gang shit, my nigga. You know what fuck we rocking. Why is 2 seconds back in the place right now?
A young rapper from Toronto who went by the name YS has been identified as the victim in a homicide in Surrey on Monday.
Toronto rapper YS was quickly making a name for himself in the Canadian rap scene. Known for his catchy tracks like John Wick and Swag Mine, he was already gaining significant attention. He also made waves with his feature on the hit song My Team, which became one of the biggest anthems to come out of the city. With his unique style and undeniable talent, YS seemed destined for a successful career in music. Fans from coast to coast were tuning in, and many believed he had what it took to go far. But in a tragic twist, YS's promising journey was abruptly and violently ended. On December 24th, the unthinkable happened. He was shot and killed in Surrey, British Columbia, on a cold winter night. The news of his death shook not only his fans, but also his friends, colleagues, and the entire Canadian music community. It was a loss that left many heartbroken, struggling to make sense of how someone so young, so full of promise, could have their life taken so suddenly.
Rest in peace to the legend himself, YS, bro. It's kind of like so sad, man. Like, it's just...
YS's death was a brutal reminder of how fleeting life can be, especially for those in the music world, where danger sometimes lurks just beneath the surface. In this video, we take a deep dive into the story of YS, exploring the events leading up to his death and uncovering some of the lesser-known details of his life and career. We'll examine how his untimely passing affected not just his fans, but the entire Toronto music scene, where his influence was only beginning to be felt. We hope you enjoy this video. YS, a Northside rapper from Toronto, is widely known to be from Shoreham Court in the Jane and Finch area. However, there's a lingering rumor that he spent his childhood years in Regent Park. This claim is backed by Paperboy, a rapper from Regent Park, who insists it's true. But here's the catch. Paperboy isn't exactly a neutral source. He reps Regent Park and is 3LK, meaning he has beef with YS's crew, which makes his claims feel more like shots than facts. The story of YS isn't just about his music. It's about the life he lived before he ever picked up a mic. On May 9th, 2017, when YS was just 15 years old, he made a decision that would change the course of his life. He and another teenager carried out a violent home invasion that would later make headlines. The details are chilling. YS and his accomplice broke into a home, reportedly looking for a safe full of money. During the robbery, YS shot the man inside, leaving him with life-threatening injuries. The victim's son, trying to protect his father, stepped in to stop the chaos. But things only got worse. YS struck the son before escaping. It didn't take long for the police to catch up. Both teenagers were arrested the same day, and the charges against YS were serious. At just 15, he found himself facing the consequences of a crime that rocked the neighborhood.
Youngest son came down the stairs. They butted him with a gun. The husband heard the ruckus. He came down.
The incident landed him in the Roy McMurtry Youth Center, a place he would call home for the next 3 years. During his time there, YS would miss out on his late teenage years, locked away while the world outside kept moving. It wasn't until he turned 18 that he finally walked free. By then, he was a young man with a past that couldn't be erased, but also with a name that was starting to mean something in Toronto's rap scene. It was a seemingly ordinary November afternoon on November 4th, 2020, when Antonio "Tony Scratch" Fiorda's life was brutally and suddenly cut short in broad daylight. Fiorda, 50, was parked in a lot near Sherway Gardens Mall, minding his own business, when a car pulled up beside him. Without warning, the driver opened fire, hitting Fiorda with several shots before speeding off, disappearing into the busy city streets like nothing had happened. But Fiorda wasn't just any regular man on the street. He had deep, dangerous ties to the criminal world. He was connected to a powerful crime family in York region, and even had links to the notorious 'Ndrangheta, the mafia group from southern Italy. His murder wasn't a random act of violence. It was something far more deliberate, a chilling message sent to everyone involved in the underworld. His death shook the criminal community to its core, reminding them all that no one, no matter how powerful, is ever truly safe. Fiorda was rushed to the hospital, but despite all efforts to save him, he succumbed to his injuries a few hours later. His death wasn't just a personal tragedy. It felt like a warning to everyone who knew him, to everyone he worked with, and to anyone who had made the mistake of crossing the wrong people. As investigators began to piece things together, they quickly made arrests. Saeed Mohiuddin, a Toronto rapper known on the streets as Flippa, was charged with first-degree murder. Alongside him was 18-year-old Jordan Thompson, arrested for being an accessory after the fact. But the story didn't end there. The real bombshell came when it was revealed that the shooter, the person who actually pulled the trigger, was none other than YS, a name already well known in criminal circles. What made this case even more chilling was the timing. Just after YS was named as the gunman, news broke that he had died under mysterious circumstances. The details of his death were unclear, but one thing was certain. If he had been alive, he would have been facing charges for Fiorda's murder. His sudden death left behind a trail of unanswered questions. Who had ordered the hit? What led to it? And what would have happened if YS had lived to stand trial? The plot thickened when it was revealed that Flippa and YS had been paid a staggering $60,000 for carrying out the murder. But rather than keeping their payout quiet, they flaunted it. Flippa, in particular, took to Instagram, posting photos of the cash as if murdering a mob figure was just another job for him. It was a chilling and arrogant display of how detached they had become from the consequences of their actions. To them, the money was just another payday. But to investigators, those Instagram posts would become key evidence. The photos of the cash and the careless posts about their payout would ultimately help police connect the dots and reveal the true scope of what had happened. What Flippa and YS didn't realize was that their pride and need to boast would come back to haunt them, turning their own arrogance into the key that would unlock the investigation. In the end, Fiorda's death wasn't just a tragic loss. It was a stark reminder of the cold, calculated world that some people live in. A world where murder is just another business transaction, and where the blood money made from it is something to show off. For Flippa and YS, it was business as usual. But for everyone else, it was a wake-up call. A warning that in the criminal world, no one is truly untouchable. And even when it seems like the criminals are getting away with everything, the truth has a way of eventually coming to light. It was a quiet Monday evening in South Surrey when a local woman returned to her neighborhood near 152 Street and 22nd Avenue. The sun had just set, and the streets were calm, just like any other night. But something felt off. As she pulled into her driveway just after 8 p.m., she immediately noticed her neighbor's vehicle was gone. Not unusual, but what stopped her in her tracks was the front door. It was wide open. That wasn't like him. Curiosity turned to concern. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly made her way across the front yard and stepped inside. the house was eerily silent. Then, in the living room, she saw him. A man face down on the floor, motionless, lifeless. Stunned, she stepped back in disbelief. She didn't recognize him, but one thing was clear: he was dead. Panicking, she called her landlord, who quickly contacted 911. Moments later, Surrey RCMP officers arrived on scene. They were called at 9:28 p.m. to reports of a body inside the home.
This is kind of unnerving, and there's a lot of seniors, as well, and I just think, my goodness, how something could have been even more tragic.
Days passed, rumors swirled, but the identity of the victim remained a mystery until Friday of that same week. The woman, who still wishes to remain anonymous for fear of reprisal, was scrolling through her phone when she stumbled across an article from Hip Hop Canada. The headline stopped her cold. A Toronto rapper known as YS had been found dead in Surrey. The article included photos, social media images, and as she stared at the screen, her heart sank. It was him, the same man she had found on the floor. She hadn't known who he was at the time, just a stranger. But now, the pieces have come together. What started as a quiet night on a peaceful street has now become the center of a mystery, one that connects two cities, a grieving music community, and a neighbor who will never forget what she saw.
I'm very, very sorry. Part of it. I'm just trying to get the visuals out of my head. I'm very, very sorry. All right.
She ran home and called the man who rents the house. He called police.
There were some friends staying in the house, and it was one of their friends or something. I really.
Oh, so you don't even know the person?
I don't even know the person.
The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team confirmed Friday night that the victim is 18-year-old Keyshawn Brown of Ontario. Investigators believe this was an isolated incident.
It's been nearly 5 years since Northside rapper YS was tragically gunned down in Surrey, British Columbia, during the holiday season of 2019. The shocking event shook the local community and left a mark on fans who still mourn his loss today. Despite the time that's passed, the case remains an unsolved mystery, with no clear answers about who was responsible or why it happened. The circumstances surrounding his death have sparked countless conversations, rumors, and debates, both on the streets and online. For many, YS was more than just a rapper. He was a voice for his community and a rising talent who had the potential to make a bigger name for himself. His death not only robbed his family, friends, and fans of his presence, but also left behind a void that remains deeply felt in the music scene. Here at Six Trenches, we've spent time digging into the details and examining the rumors. Over the years, various theories have surfaced, each offering a different take on what might have led to his untimely death. Was it the result of ongoing street conflicts, a personal vendetta, or was it something else entirely? In this part of the video, we'll be breaking down some of the most talked about conspiracies surrounding YS's death. From alleged connections to other violent incidents, to questions about his ties to certain groups, we'll be exploring the theories that continue to fuel speculation. Our goal is to piece together what we can, based on the information available, and shed light on this case that remains one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the Canadian rap scene. Just days before YS was gunned down in British Columbia, whispers of a daring robbery began making the rounds. He and his close friend, 22 Neat, had pulled off a risky heist, walking away with an undisclosed amount of cash. No one knew exactly where or when it had happened, but one thing was certain. The job had drawn more attention than they expected. Whether it was the authorities or dangerous enemies catching wind of their crime, the heat was on, forcing the two men to flee to BC in hopes of laying low until things cooled off. Inside a quiet house in British Columbia, the two sat at a table, counting their stolen money. The room was dimly lit, the only sounds being the rustle of cash and the occasional creak of the old wooden floor beneath their feet. At first, it seemed like they had pulled off the perfect crime. No cops, no witnesses, just them and their payday. But the celebration didn't last long. As the stacks of bills piled up, so did the tension. 22 Neat's eyes darted between the money and YS, a frown creeping onto his face. Something didn't feel right. The amount in front of them wasn't adding up to what he thought they should have. A suspicion took hold of him, one he couldn't shake. "You sure this is everything?" 22. Neat finally asked, his tone sharp. "Yeah, man," YS replied, barely looking up, still focused on counting. But 22 Neat wasn't convinced. His gut told him otherwise. His voice grew louder, his words more aggressive. He pressed YS harder, accusing him of holding out, of pocketing more than his fair share. YS scoffed, shaking his head, but the frustration in his eyes was clear. "You serious right now?" he shot back. "After everything we've been through?" But doubt has a way of twisting even the strongest bonds. The air grew heavy, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Voices turned to shouts, and shouts turned to threats. Then, in a flash, the argument crossed a line neither of them could take back. Fueled by rage and paranoia, 22 Neat made a split-second decision, one that would change everything. Without thinking twice, he pulled out his gun and emptied the clip into YS. As the smoke cleared, YS lay motionless. The very money they had risked everything for scattered around him. What had started as a brotherhood built on trust had ended in betrayal and bloodshed. And just like that, one friend was dead, and the other was left staring at the consequences of his own actions.
Could be little kids, or in a restaurant and a bullet comes flying through, and they don't care for anybody's lives. Might have to start wearing bulletproof vests.
December 23rd, 9 p.m. YS was found murdered inside a house in Surrey, BC. The story was sudden, shocking, and left a hole in the local scene that still hasn't healed. But as we look deeper into what really happened that night, this second conspiracy theory starts to feel less like speculation and more like the truth. Before arriving in Surrey, we believe YS and his close associate, 22 Neat, had just pulled off a robbery, not in British Columbia, but in a completely different province. A major job, not some petty theft. This was the kind of robbery that catches serious heat from law enforcement, and the kind that brings in a large amount of cash. The kind of cash that turns heads and changes lives. After the job, the pressure was on. With police likely already on their trail, YS and 22 Neat moved fast. They hopped on a flight and escaped to Surrey, laying low in a house they believed was safe, a temporary hideout where they could cool down and figure out their next move. But here's where the story takes a turn. According to what we believe, they didn't come to Surrey empty-handed. They brought the money with them, all of it. The same money they had risked everything to get. There was so much cash, allegedly, that it didn't just bring relief or excitement. It brought tension. Greed started to set in. That kind of money doesn't just sit quietly in a duffel bag. It whispers, it tempts, and eventually, it turns friends into enemies. We believe that once they arrived at the house in Surrey, something changed. Maybe 22 Neat started looking at YS differently. Maybe he felt entitled to more than his share. Maybe YS tried to take control of the situation, thinking his loyalty would protect him. But when that much money is on the line, trust becomes fragile. loyalty starts to crack, and on the night of December 23rd, we believe that crack shattered. YS was murdered in cold blood, not by a stranger, not by a rival, but by someone he considered family. Someone who had just stood beside him during a high-stakes robbery. Someone who helped him carry that money all the way to Surrey. In this theory, the motive isn't random. It isn't a mystery. It's greed, raw, unfiltered, and deadly. YS may have survived the robbery, survived the escape, and outrun the law. But he couldn't outrun betrayal. In the end, the money they risked everything for became the very thing that tore them apart and cost YS his life. In the wake of the shocking murder of Northside affiliate YS, gunned down in Surrey on what seemed like an ordinary night, the streets were quiet, but the energy in the city was anything but. As news of his death began to spread, so did the tension between rival sides of Toronto's rap scene. Then came the next spark. Duvy, a well-known rapper from the South Side, dropped a track that ignited instant controversy. The song, originally titled Superstar Houdini, wasn't just any release. It was a diss track aimed directly at YS and other Northside affiliates. Duvy used the moment to take shots at his rivals, seemingly capitalizing on the tragedy to score lyrical points. It wasn't just rap beef. It was personal. The timing, the tone, the name drops. It sent waves through the city. The track didn't go unnoticed. In fact, it hit close to home for some of the biggest names in the game. Pressa, arguably the most recognized artist from the North Side, wasted no time responding. His reaction was swift and bold. He took to social media, posting a tribute to YS on his story. But it wasn't just about mourning. Alongside the post, Pressa fired back at Duvy directly. In a sharp caption, he mocked the Southside rapper for getting shot in the leg, flipping the narrative and adding salt to the wound. "You're lucky it was your leg and not a headshot," he wrote. Words that weren't random. They were a deliberate nod to one of YS's most infamous bars from his hit track, My Team, where he raps about making sure his enemies don't get second chances. The message was loud and clear. The war of words wasn't over. And now, even in death, YS's lyrics were being echoed back through the streets, this time by his closest allies, with real-life consequences behind the music. It was no longer just a diss track. It was a declaration, a reminder that in Toronto's rap scene, the lines between art, street, and survival are razor thin. And when someone crosses one, the response is rarely just lyrical.
Pressa's neck looks like meth, she moving like a buck tea. And twin made it too wet, so I just had her suck me.
Just 4 days after YS was believed to be murdered inside a quiet home in Surrey, BC, another life was taken, this time in Calgary. On December 27th, shortly before 9 p.m., Farah Handul, better known by his street name, 22 Neat, was found fatally shot near the intersection of 16 Avenue and Home Road Northwest. No gun was recovered at the scene. No arrests were made. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't just the murder itself. It was the timing. The proximity between YS's murder and 22 Neat's death felt like more than coincidence. It felt calculated, surgical, personal. According to Calgary police, Mohammed Hussein Ahmed is currently wanted for questioning in relation to the shooting of Farah Hirsi Handul. That's the official story. But just like with YS's death, we have our own theory, one that paints a much darker picture. YS and 22 Neat were close, maybe too close. They were believed to be involved in a robbery together in another province. They fled to Surrey, laid low in a house, and then, boom, YS ends up dead, shot and left in that same supposed safe house. We believe 22 pulled the trigger, driven by greed over the massive amount of cash they had just come up on. But he didn't get away clean. 4 days later, he was the one bleeding out in Calgary.
Last night. Good evening. Calgary police are now releasing the name of the victim. Investigators are also calling this targeted shooting brazen. Silvana Benelich joins us live from near where it all happened. And Silvana, police are worried about innocent people getting caught up in the crossfire in an incident like this.
Absolutely, Joel. Police saying that the brazen way that this shooting attack happened could have easily had a very tragic outcome for innocent people who were in the area, and they're hoping that any information from the public will help them catch whoever did this. About an hour ago, we learned the name of the man who was killed. He is 23-year-old Farah Handul of Ontario. Police believe that he'd only been in Calgary since December 24th.
Here's where things get even more intense. While the police are pointing fingers in one direction, the streets have a different story. A theory has been circulating for years now in the Toronto rap community, whispered in barbershops, DMs, and street corners. The rumor? That Toronto rapper YG was the one who allegedly sought revenge for YS, executing 22 neat in retaliation for the betrayal and cold-blooded killing of his close friend. Now again, this is just a theory, a rumor. No facts have been proven in court. But the timing, the connections, and the street whispers all tell a story that's hard to ignore. YS dies on December 23rd. 22 is killed on December 27th. That's not weeks, that's not months, that's 4 days. 4 days between betrayal and payback. Whether or not YG was involved is still unknown. But in a world where loyalty is everything and betrayal gets you killed, many believe this wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. This theory might never be confirmed. But in the court of public opinion and in the streets of Toronto, it's a story that continues to echo louder with every passing year. 6 days after the recording of this video, and years after YS was tragically gunned down in Surrey, his close friend and longtime associate, Blockboy, took to Instagram with a message that's turning heads. On his story, he reposted a picture of YS, accompanied by a cryptic but chilling caption, "All snakes must die. Rest in peace, my bro." The post immediately sparked speculation, with many fans and followers convinced this was more than just a tribute. Some believe Blockboy was sending a not-so-subtle shot at 22 neat, possibly hinting at betrayal.